Hello and welcome to Deprogrammed with Keri Smith. This is a brand new channel, so if you arrived here via the algorithm, make sure you hit like and subscribe if you like the video. I am very excited for my guest today. I'm going to be speaking with Dr. Michael Rectenwald. He is a former NYU professor and author, and this will be my first time getting to speak with him. Hello, Michael. How are you?
Hi, Keri. How are you? Good.
I'm good. I'm really happy this worked out. I know you're incredibly busy, and I just appreciate you donating your time and your insights today.
No worries. My pleasure.
So you had on the show Deprogrammed, a lot of times we sort of talk about my old ideology, which is I most often call social justice ideology, but I think it's most colloquially known as woke ideology. And a lot of people are familiar with the cancel culture mobs that are happening as a result of this belief system becoming dominant culturally. You went through something of your own cancellation. Would you mind telling people a little bit about that? We don't have to spend too much time on it.
Yeah, it's pretty well known, and I've written about it in Springtime for Snowflakes. I was a leftist Marxist professor, as a matter of fact, at NYU, and I started to have some fallout with the social justice ideology, really, as you put it, and I started a Twitter account. It was called the Anti-PC NYU Prof. And I started tweeting about the social justice lunacy on campuses. And sooner or later, a NYU reporter, student newspaper reporter, contacted me and said, if you're really an NYU professor, I really love to talk to you because what you're saying is not typical of NYU professors.
Especially a Marxist professor.
Yeah, well, they didn't know that, but they found out. And I said, yeah, I'll do the interview. And I didn't, this account had been anonymous, this Twitter account, but I went on the record as myself, answered the questions, and really laid it on in terms of what I thought was going on with social justice, as it was called. Mm-hmm. And now, as you said, called wokeness. And 48 hours later, I was in the dean's office with the head of human resources being pushed into a leave of absence. Little did I know, while I was in that meeting, this committee called the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Group had published a denunciation of me in the same newspaper and called me everything from, well, they said that I was guilty for the structure and content of my thinking, guilty for the structure and content of my thinking.
Wow. You were guilty of actual thought crime.
Yeah, absolutely. And it all just circled the drain and went down the drain after that, as far as my time at NYU. I went on the leave because I took the leave because I thought I needed to take the leave because they were strong-arming me into it. And I was up for promotion to full professor, and I didn't want to jeopardize that. So I took their advice and took this leave. When I came back, I got all these. I went on, with the semester, and then the last day of the semester that I was back, I got this huge barrage of emails started coming out on the NYU listserv, to all the faculty and staff and administrators. And they were calling me every name in the book: racist, sexist, Nazi, homophobe, white, short pants, white devil. And I have to look that one up still.
Did you say short pants, white devil?
Yeah, short pants, white devil. I don't even know what the hell that means still to this day. This was years ago, but I don't remember. And so, I got attorneys, and I sued these people and the university for this libel that they were spreading all over the place. And they hired an army of attorneys, and so the case was was dismissed. But I wasn't done, and so I committed a terrible faux pas. I invited Milo Yiannopoulos to speak in my classroom.
Oh my, I didn't know that part of it.
on
Wow.
Halloween. Yeah, on Halloween. And he was going to speak about, I said, why don't you speak about the politics of Halloween? Because Halloween costume shaming and canceling was a big part of what was going on. And so he agreed to do it. He had written a talk. It was really well done. I made sure there wasn't anything scandalous in there, and it was very scholarly, actually.
Mhm.
And but I got all these, when this news of this got out that this was happening, got in the New York Post, as a matter of fact. By the way, I had been all over the media by this time. When it got in the New York Post, I started getting emails from all these student groups and saying that I was jeopardizing their safety and all this nonsense. And NYU couldn't shut down the class because this was now a classroom setting. So here you have academic freedom as opposed to like an extracurricular event.
Mhm.
So they couldn't do anything. But the mayor of New York, de Blasio, shut down the classroom.
Wow.
Yeah.
The mayor got involved.
The mayor called NYU, supposedly, or they called him and said, whatever. I don't know how it went down. But the story is that de Blasio himself canceled the class. So
That's amazing.
yeah, that was that. And but Milo did the talk from an undisclosed location and streamed it on the internet. It was hilarious. He totally changed it because he was now not restricted by anything about the classroom. Anyway, then
And I bet he got more views because of it too.
I got a lot more
Yeah.
views. And then NYU came back, as I suspected after this, they would come back to the table to negotiate a settlement with me, which they did.
Well, that's good. And so then after you left NYU, you started you stopped talking about all this stuff. No kidding. Then
Yes, I
then
went into hiding.
would you say though that you became more vocal about
Oh,
these
yeah.
issues?
In the interim, my book, Springtime for Snowflakes, came out before I left NYU. It came out. And then I just kept writing on all these things. I wrote this book, Google Archipelago, which
Mhm.
was about basically the same ideology in big tech or big digital, as I called it in the book. And then I wrote Beyond Woke, which is a series of essays that take this thing from every angle you can imagine. And then my last book was Thought Criminal, a novel.
I read Thought Criminal.
Yes, of
Yeah.
course, it has nothing to do with my own experience.
Yeah, it's great. I love, well, I mean, the past few years, especially, I've been reading a lot more, futuristic dystopian novels. And that book, you included a lot of stuff about a virus
Yeah.
and the government. And it's anyone that's interested should check it out. It's really very applicable to the times we find ourselves in.
Yeah, the virus was in the book. The virus, I will give this away. It's not a biological virus, as it turns out. It's actually technological. It's nanobots.
Mhm.
They create neural links, if you will, to this database called Collective Mind. And the story is about how this one hero, or the protagonist, to be more accurate, and a bunch of others, a network of thought deviationists, as they're called, try to stay disconnected from collective mind and finally overthrow it.
Mhm. So I wanted to talk to you in particular about one of the articles that you wrote recently, which was the woke hegemony.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, and so you were one of the first people that I saw talking about the global reset, about the
Great reset, yeah.
the Great Reset, the World Economic Forum,
Yeah.
and ESG scores, and this phenomenon of woke capitalism, which I think a
Hmm.
lot of people like myself struggle to wrap our heads around.
Yeah.
Why are corporations? Maybe we could just start there. Why are corporations embracing woke ideology, in your
Yeah.
opinion?
Yeah, that was something that perplexed me, and so I started to investigate it. It perplexed me because why would they be embracing leftism? Because after all, the history of corporations and the left is one of antagonism, going back to the 60s and even before.
Yeah.
I mean, it's. I mean, if you look at socialism, what is it? It's about bringing down capitalism. So, the left and corporations have not been friendly bedfellows. So I was really like, what's going on here? Why are these corporations effectively spouting semi-socialist ideology? I couldn't figure it out. So there's a number of theories that are floated about this, and I studied them all, and I don't think any of them. I didn't find any of them adequate to explain it. One is the one floated by the guy that first introduced the term woke capitalism was Ross Douthat of the New York Times, and he said basically it's a way of placating consumers instead of giving them real economic benefits like higher wages or better benefits or whatever. It's just an assuage. It's kind of a rhetorical placebo. And that sounded okay, but it didn't sound totally explanatory to me. And then there's another one that it's a way of giving people representation in the public sphere or the public square where they don't feel they have any in the political sphere, or they feel disenfranchised. So, that was another one. And then there's others like they're just, corporations are just trying to avoid cancellation themselves. And they are trying to placate these leftists to keep from getting canceled. And all of those aren't wrong, but they don't seem sufficient, in my opinion. And I went and I started this with Google Archipelago, which is about the leftism of big digital and why the hell they are leftist, And I started to believe, and I started to think, and I theorized that that this wokeness actually benefits them economically and otherwise. It's just behooves them to use wokeness, and I can tell you why if you want to talk about that. It goes into the Great Reset, and it's
Yeah, I would like to talk about that. You used a word in your essay. You said it's like a parapolitical apparatus that's being formed.
well, that was one of the theories. That's the theory by this Business Insider, Josh Barrow. He said that wokeness serves as a parapolitical representation
Oh, okay.
for consumers, but it's not
Okay.
the explanation I adopt. So in that essay, I'm writing. Well, I could give a little bit of background about how I write, and I taught this way too. Is I teach students to first you go down this faulty path in which you discuss the possible alternatives to your thesis, and then you take a turn back to the main path, and you arrive at your own actual thesis. So that's what I did there. And so my actual thesis is this: that these corporations are actually monopolists at base, and they're attempting to establish monopolies. And wokeness is the means of establishing by which they are attempting to establish monopolization over the economy. It's a demarcation device. It's a kind of way of demarcating the woke from the non-woke, and then driving all production and legitimacy first of all, and then viability, and then capital investments to the woke, and driving it away from the unwoke. So it's a means of cancellation, just as it works on individuals. It's a means by which to cancel corporations, just as it cancels individuals. And that is part of a monopoly scheme. It's a way of monopolizing the economy by virtue of getting rid of competitors. So that's my argument, and I've made it in different ways in a number of different pieces. It's what I said about the big digital, why they're woke.
So, for example, for anybody who's not familiar, you're bringing to mind for me. We'll just look at big digital. that is what's happened to competitors. So you've had these competitors to Twitter and to Facebook, like Gab, like Parler,
Parler.
and some of the early ones like Gab, they've faced this cancellation every step of the way.
Right.
They're not allowed to have their app in the App Store. You
Yeah.
can't get it on Google Play. You can't get it on the iPhone. They have to host their own. They have their own servers. They have to host their own website. Everything that is provided for places like Twitter and Facebook is denied to them. They have to build everything from scratch.
Indeed. So they're a great example. So, and then I started getting into this whole ESG thing, which is the Environmental, Social, and Governance Index on the stock markets. And so then I started realizing this woke capitalism is not merely like rhetoric. It's not simply advertising. It's not even just local cancellations or individual cancellations. It is a systematic way of destroying competition, because the ESG is a way of directing capital to the environmentally, socially, and governance compliant corporations and away from others. And it's being implemented from the very top, not just the World Economic Forum, which is really pushing the agenda, but the major asset managers and banks are all abiding by this ESG, and their investments in corporations and companies and businesses are dependent upon the ESG. So it's a way of driving away capital from these ESG unworthy companies and into the coffers of the ESG companies. This is a huge monopoly scheme.
Can you describe what the ESG score actually is, like for the layperson?
It stands for environmental, social, and governance. So there's three criteria, three metrics on which they evaluate a company. How environmentally sustainable are they? Do they have how much energy do they use? How much oil are they dependent upon? On and so forth. Then do they have a net zero plan for the future? They need to have a net zero plan where they're completely non-carbon producing in anything they do. And this goes also to their suppliers. Okay,
Wow.
so they say, do their suppliers how environmentally friendly are they? And do their suppliers have a net zero plan? So it starts metastasizing out to everything. That's the environmental. That's the E. The S is social. Now, this is social justice, period. This is social justice criteria. That is, do they have the right composition of identities in their on their board, in their management, in their employee base? How many black, lesbian, transgender people do they have? None? Oh, well, that's a low.
Yeah. I'm
So
sorry, I'm laughing. This is just, it's so regressive. This
is how far wokeness has gone.
Yeah.
And then governance. Governance. Oh, the other thing is on the S. Do they have any right wing? Do they have any right wing people on their staff or in their management? Oh, that's going to be negative.
Wow.
Do they have non woke people? And then there's the governance, and that is like, how do they govern the corporation? Are they fair? Are they equitable? Blah blah blah. How many? Like, how nice are they to whoever? And then also, like, how well do they cooperate with the government? Now, the ESG is now applied. It is applied to these corporations through the stock markets, but it will soon be applied to individuals, and this will be a major component of the social credit score.
I want to talk about the social credit score in a second, but before we do, there's another word that you use in this essay that I was wondering if you could help define for people. You talk about stakeholder capitalism.
Yeah, stakeholder capitalism. This, as far as I know, and I've gone as far, tried to dig for the roots of this, and as far as I can tell, it goes back to Klaus Schwab's book in 1971, something like management and mechanical engineering. It's innocuous sounding enough. But he introduced this idea of the stakeholder to a corporation. And the stakeholder is not, it may include, it includes shareholders, that is people that own stock in the company, but it also includes anybody that is putatively affected by the corporation. That is their customers, their employees, the community, society at large, and the planet. So it is the stakeholders. So the companies are supposed to reorient themselves, and this is partly what's meant by reset. They are to reset their priorities, not in terms of who, their shareholder growth and profit to the shareholders and so on, but rather towards this new contingent of beneficiaries or those affected by corporate behavior, the stakeholders. So there's a lot of slippage here because it really involves the theft of capital by this means is a way of controlling people's companies, their business practices in every regard, so that they no longer really own their, the owners of the companies really don't have the full disposal of their property as they wish. They can't run their companies like they want to or how they might want to. They now have to abide by these stakeholder roles. And this is executed through the ESG primarily right now. But they're also, the World Economic Forum is evaluating companies on the basis of their stakeholder viability, their stakeholder worthiness. And there's a whole slew of companies. Now, speaking of the ESG, back to the ESG, every major asset manager, from BlackRock Inc. to State Street to UBS to Vanguard Group, all of those people, all these corporations, they're totally on board with the ESG and the stakeholder model. So what's wrong with this? Well, it sounds so nice, corporations caring about people for once.
Right.
That's not what this is about. This is about controlling them so that they no longer have property, really. This is a socialization process. It's a means of socializing their assets. And
so why are they, why would they, I think a person might ask, so why would they be on board? Why would BlackRock be on board with something that is working to destroy their own control of their company?
Well, BlackRock is implementing this too. They control $10 trillion worth of assets. And so they're the ones investing in companies. Like they take, now people will say, well, BlackRock owns $10 trillion worth of assets. That's not true. They manage these assets. They don't own these companies. They manage the investment in companies. So, for example, they hold many pension plans for many states in the United States. They control the pension plans. Why do companies abide? Well, for one, it's being dictated to by these investment managers, these asset managers like BlackRock, and banks similarly are also tied into and are subscribers to the stakeholder and ESG model. And Bank of America and a slew of other banks are on board. And all the way, it's going to go all the way to the Fed. The Fed is going to be on board. And they'll also determine what banks they loan money to on the basis of the ESG scores, not only of the banks, but of their customers and the companies they loan money to. So banks are being evaluated on the basis of how well do the companies they loan money to abide by these stakeholder ESG metrics. And this is, of course, going to cause banks not to invest in non-ESG worthy companies. It's going to cause complete control over these companies on the basis of these criteria. And as such, It undermines their actual autonomy, of course, but also their actual holdings. In other words, they're not really the owners, because what is an owner? Somebody that owns something, can dispose of it or use it however they wish. That's what ownership means. So this is really a serious breach of property rights, huge breach of property rights. And why do other companies abide by it? Well, why do they push it? Well, as it goes back to this monopoly idea, they can use the ESG and the woke criteria, ESG, woke, stakeholder. It's all synonymous, really, as a means to get rid of competitors. They're not woke, so they can't be invested in. They're not woke. They can't get the assets. They're not viable for loans. So they're getting onto it and becoming the leaders in this. The ones that are becoming the leaders, because they see that this is going to be a way to get capital, and it's going to be a way to drive out competitors from getting capital. It's a serious shibboleth. You speak this language, or you're not part of the tribe, and it's a serious demarcation device to get rid of the non-woke.
Wow. You mentioned destruction of property rights.
Yeah.
So that's something I think I've seen playing out in the past couple of years, with first the CDC saying that landlords couldn't evict people
Right.
because of COVID. So even if they weren't paying rent, you couldn't do an eviction, which of course forced a lot of small landlords, people that I know who make their living from owning a couple of properties, renting them out, to sell those properties to places like BlackRock.
Actually, Blackstone.
Blackstone.
Yeah.
I get those two confused.
They're connected, though. They're connected. I can tell you how. But Blackstone, goes then and they swoop up all these properties that have been basically put on the market by these people that couldn't afford to have no rent come in. I used to own properties here in Pittsburgh, and I sold them, but I probably would have got screwed anyway, because it was because of this, because they got all these they got all this rent, what do they call it, exemptions. You didn't have to pay rent, so it crushed a lot of companies and small real estate holders, who then sold their properties to people like Blackstone. Now, Blackstone, anything black is black before in the name of a company is a sign that it's a bad, evil company.
Wait, what about Black & Decker?
No, Black & Decker, yeah. No, I don't know about that. Okay, but like Blackstone, BlackRock, and then Blackwater, they're also evil. But Blackstone actually was the first funder of BlackRock. So they were the first investor in BlackRock. So they're connected intimately. They're not the same company. Blackstone is a all-purpose corporation that just does whatever they can get their hands into. Blackstone is an asset manager. Blackstone was funded originally by BlackRock. So they're very connected at the hip.
So, first I saw the CDC thing about eviction, and that's squeezing out small-time property owners, the middle class. The other thing, I wondered if you thought this was part of it, was I noticed in the infrastructure bill, they were trying to push under the Biden admin with, what's his name? Pete Buttigieg. They were trying to push instituting a new tax per mile on private vehicles. So if you own a car, the government wanted to take $1 for every mile that you drove in your private vehicle.
And before I talk about that, let's talk about how COVID crushed the small businesses. I mean, millions and millions of small businesses were crushed by the COVID response by the states, by states and by local and regional government. And then, of course, the Amazons, the Facebooks, the Walmarts, on and on. All these grew enormously during this time. I mean, their revenues grew. So, this was one way of crushing the middle class. This tax on vehicles is another. There seems to be, and I think it's consistent with the Great Reset objectives, is to get rid of the middle class, to get rid of these gas guzzling, meat eating consumers, not to get rid of them as people necessarily, not to kill them, but to destroy their standard of living and destroy their rights. Because these people are dangerous to the planet, you see. They want to get rid of our consumption, our meat eating. Meat causes all this energy. So they're going to do this vis-a-vis like things like what Buttigieg or whatever the hell his name is. I call him Butt. Just leave it.
I will call him Butt.
I won't say any more. I went on maternity leave. Anyway, personal carbon allowance is going to be part of this. You know, everybody's going to have a personal carbon allowance. How much? So spending will be calculated in terms of energy consumption, in particular, carbon-based energy consumption. So you've had one piece of meat this week. That's it for you for the week or the month because you've consumed too much carbon. You have reached the limit of your personal carbon allowance, and this stuff is out there. This is happening.
Can you talk about how I've tried to explain this before, just in personal conversations with people I know? Can you? And I haven't always succeeded at describing it well. Can you talk about the vax mandates and how those could potentially lead to something like this social credit score, this ESG score, this personal carbon score?
Well, I think that the social credit score will end up being a configuration that includes several factors. It'll be a health assessment, and that will include a vaccine component. It will be a personal carbon allowance component. It will be a social component, and that is the social justice element. And it will likely have a governance component, like that is what is your status with reference to the state? Do you pay your taxes, on and on and on? So, and that then will be used to determine your financial and social viability in general. Can you do this? Can you do that? Are you worthy for a loan? Can you buy a house? Because will you no longer just your credit score, but your social, economic, and political credit score will be really what determines the viability for anything in terms of the economy and in jobs, employment as well. So this is a way of squeezing people in. Do you want to talk about how far wokeness goes? This is how far it goes. It's a complete control mechanism.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's totalitarian all the way through.
Yeah.
I saw this in the beginning. I saw this with the social justice monsters that came after me. I said, these people are totalitarian. And then the university backed them up. And I said, these people are totalitarian. And then I saw it was going on in big tech. These people are totalitarian. And now I see it's everywhere. The whole
It's like we're living in a zombie movie. And you see that first zombie and you're like,
that's right.
What's wrong with that person? And then you see it, and then it's, oh, I live in a zombie world now.
Exactly. And then you're like, and then there's all these people that are going along with it quietly, like, total automatons,
Yes.
And this seems to be the product they're looking for. The automaton.
So how do you, well, actually, before I ask that, let me back up a little. Since you mentioned when you first started noticing this at the university, you said you were a Marxist professor. Are you still a Marxist?
Well, I mean, I say a Marxist professor. I was a Marxist and a professor.
Okay.
So I wasn't like a Marxist professor in the sense that I was teaching Marxism in the classroom. I did not. Although I did, but I never taught, and I never believed in. I argued with some fellow Marxist professors that you shouldn't be using the classroom as a platform for propaganda and indoctrination. I said this even as a Marxist.
Oh, you were an anomaly back then.
I was an anomaly from the start. I always had these kind of like independent streaks about me, and I barely fit in anywhere in the Marxist world. I found the most sort of like outsider niche that you could imagine within Marxism. But no, I'm no longer a Marxist at all. In fact, I'm a fierce critic of Marxism, socialism, every type, social democracy.
What was that change like for you?
Liberating beyond words.
What do you mean?
Liberating. Well, I no longer had to worry whether my thoughts aligned with the party platform. Like, oh, don't think that. No, don't think that. Oh, no. I started saying, well, wait a minute. Maybe my own thoughts maybe they're fine. Maybe I don't need to disavow my own thinking. Maybe I can actually entertain my own thoughts and see where they go. And that was extremely liberating when I rejected the whole left at once. I said, I made a decision, and I tweeted about this, and it probably was my biggest tweet ever. It had like 250,000 views and likes or something like that. But which I don't have much credence in Twitter. But anyway, I mean, I think I'm severely squelched there, but that's another point.
Yeah, we all going to have warnings on us soon. I know several people have warning labels on them now.
Yeah, this is a dangerous person. Interestingly enough, that's the same exact language they used in the Soviet Union. They called them dangerous persons, and that's what they call them. Facebook calls them. Twitter's increasingly calling them dangerous persons. This nomenclature they could have adopted straight out of the Soviet handbook.
I think they did.
Yeah. So where were we?
You said you talked about it when you finally left. You left leftism all at once.
Yeah, and then so I left it first for political reasons, like it's totalitarian. Then I started investigating the economics much more deeply, and I had written about political economy as a Marxist, and I thought it was, true. But I started studying critiques through. First, I read a lot of history about the Soviet Union and China and the terrible political crimes that were committed, enormous, horrendous acts that they took on a systematic basis, way worse than anything other. I think Solzhenitsyn's right that Bolshevism is the most destructive, murderous ideology that has ever existed. But then I started looking at the economics and realizing, I studied Mises. That's Ludwig von Mises and his books on socialism and his books on capitalism and why one is better than the other. Why in fact is capitalism not only economically superior, but ethically superior. In fact, it's ethically uncontested. If you really look at the deep implications of socialism, you realize that it's utterly unethical. Everything about it is criminal. And from the outset, the very project is a criminal project. So, and then I realized that it can't work. Like socialism never has existed and never will because it doesn't work. It's not that it's set up and then fails. It doesn't ever get set up because it can't be. There's economic reasons why it can never be set up as such. It always has to have elements of free market enterprise in it, like China adopted, for example, in the 70s when they realized that this socialism is not working. So Dao Xingping called the plan to introduce capitalism or for-profit companies into China. He called it socialism with Chinese characteristics. It's such a, and leftists fall for this. They fall for this. The socialists, they're like, yeah, it's just socialism with Chinese characteristics. Socialism supplemented by and kept alive by capitalism. So I call it now. I call what they're trying to establish in terms of the Great Reset and all that capitalism with Chinese characteristics. Yeah.
I like that. Do you know, just as an aside, I lived in Tanzania for half a year when I was in college. It was a long time ago now. And are you familiar with the term ujamaa?
Mm-mm.
So in Swahili, I think it means, I'm trying to remember, I think it means family, but they use it to mean African socialism.
Uh-huh.
It's socialism with African characteristics.
Okay. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, the idea there with socialism with Chinese characteristics, they said, was that, Marx said that you have to have full-fledged capitalism before socialism can develop out of it. So we didn't start that way. We started with a peasant class in a feudalistic system. We need to go through capitalism first. Oh, it may last 100 years, but by that time, all these people that said it would turn into socialism are dead, naturally, and but it never turns into. In fact, they say, they always talk about how socialism has to bail out capitalism, but it's absolutely everything they say is the absolute reverse of the
Opposite.
truth. Everything. It's not capitalism. It's not that socialism bails out capitalism. It's that capitalism has to bail out socialism every single time.
Yes. When you say everything they say is the reverse.
Yeah.
This is something I wasn't really aware of until the past few years. And the more I was waking up from and leaving social justice and just becoming more aware of what was happening in the world and seeing these patterns and I don't know, do you think it's always been like this, or are we just living in a unique time, or has it been like this in certain periods of history? And we happen to be in one of those now where up is down, down is up, good is evil, evil is good, everything's inverted.
It's an inversion. Actually, I just wrote the foreword for a book that I would also recommend besides mine.
Oh, political ponerology.
Political ponerology, yeah. And he calls this thing reversive blockades, is what he refers to, this statement that is the exact opposite of the truth being made, and it's a characteristic of totalitarian regimes. It's a way for them to block your access to the truth by giving you the most preposterous impediment to getting to the truth, the opposite of the truth. So he calls it a reversive blockade. It reverses the truth and it blocks you from access to the truth because the thought is so antithetical to the truth. It serves as an impediment. And people buy this because there's a tendency in human beings, based probably on our evolutionary history, that we need to believe people.
Mhm.
We need to believe what people say because, hey, there's a bear over there, right? Okay. You're not going to go, no, let's see if he's correct. Let's go over and test it. No, you just run.
Yeah.
This is just, this is probably very much embedded in our genes. So this is why people tend to believe reversive blockades, because it's easier. And it's so hard to get to the truth because they actually say, they stop you in your access to the truth.
Because then when you make the accurate accusation, the truthful accusation, they've already heard it the other direction. And so then it becomes that two Spider-Man meme
That's
with
right.
two people pointing at each other.
And then people go, it must be somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I've heard. Yeah, it's got to be. There's two sides to every story. No, there is right and wrong. There's good and
There's
evil.
two sides. There's the lie and the truth.
Yes,
Yes,
correct.
there are two sides, the lie and the truth. And the lie is perpetrated by totalitarian regimes. Because this book puts it, it's really run by psychopaths. Now, this is not necessarily that everybody involved is a psychopath, but what they do is they induce their way of thinking onto broader and broader swaths of the population, who then take up their ideas and actually live in them. And this becomes their consciousness,
Michael, I knew this was going to be a great conversation. I knew I was going to be so excited to talk to you. This is something also I don't know if everyone, it seems a lot of people I know are starting to think about all this stuff now, but I've certainly noticed that, for example, Justin Trudeau, he comes out, he says, these truckers are authoritarians.
Yeah, they're the authority.
and then so it's the absolute opposite. The government
It's him that's the authoritarian.
Yes, he's the
And they are
authoritarian.
trying to be they're trying to express their democratic rights.
Right. And that is exactly what individuals who are psychopaths do. They engage in DARVO, denying reverse victim order. They come out. I've had interaction with a psychopath. They come out, they say everything they're doing to you, they will accuse you of.
Yes.
And then it becomes the Spider-Man meme of two Spider-Mans, and it's how do you fight that? And
Exactly.
that's what's happening on a understanding on an individual level has helped me to better understand it, I guess, on the large scale, that is actually what's happening, and it is psychopathic.
Yes, it helps you on that scale, because after all, the large scale is just individuals acting. We should have a methodological individualism that is really not to think like leftists. Everything is systemic. No, it's people doing things, and these people are inducing other people to think like them because they have the power to do so, because they have the access to the political levers, and they have access to all the media, and they control, their word is what's put out there as viable and valid. And so they control the consciousness of people vis-a-vis this. And yeah, it's a reverse of blockades. It's very difficult. It takes almost all of your energy to resist. So I find that it takes, it's almost a full-time job to be a dissident,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. To be awake currently.
Yeah. And not woke.
But not woke. Yeah. Well, to be woke is also, it's past tense. It's done. You're not awake. It's like, I already woke up. I know everything. Like, no.
Woke me when it's over. Yeah. Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about we've been talking about it already, but for anyone who's not familiar with the Great Reset, with the World Economic Forum, with Klaus Schwab, and this book that he wrote at the beginning of COVID, can you talk a little about that book and what that's about?
He wrote a book called COVID-19, The Great Reset. So tell me this is a conspiracy theory. He said basically that, COVID is teaching us that we have to reset everything, that our economic system is not viable, that it doesn't work, and that we have to have more state intervention and more control. We have to have these stakeholder capitalism. We have to have all this. And the Great Reset is just like a packaging of all these things. There's all these elements, and it's just a way of wrapping it all up and putting a bow on it and giving it to us as a gift. Thank you very much. And so it's the Great Reset is just the marketing campaign for this entire project.
I saw some of their marketing, some of their advertisements. One was the smiling guy says, in the year 2030, you will own nothing and you will be happy.
Right.
I also saw a piece that they published in Forbes. It was it was written by, it didn't have I don't think it had an actual person as the author. It just said by the World Economic Forum.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And it was a piece talking about this is the year 2030 and here's what it's like. And I think they were trying to write it as this sort of utopia, but it read like a dystopia to me, because it's this person's writing about how nobody owns anything. That's great. I don't even own my apartment. I just sleep here at night, and during the day it's used for conference meetings. And
that's exactly right. And Forbes magazine, they kept that essay up, but it's been scrubbed from the WEF website. Nevertheless, it's still maintained. And isn't that interesting? Forbes magazine, you would have thought like an instrument for capitalism. It's unbelievable that all these institutions, all these media have all been taken over by this.
Yeah. It's one of the funniest parts of that essay, I don't know if you remember, was it was like, when I want to cook dinner, I just call someone on my phone and they bring me a pot and pan and a knife, and then and whatever vegetables you don't even own a pot and a pan? Like, how terrible is that?
Yeah, you won't have a pot to piss in, literally.
No, no.
Yeah, even your underwear might be rented, So,
Yes.
yeah, I mean, they wanted this. Yeah, I mean, they tout this idea of, notice that you're going to rent everything that you have. Nothing will be owned. But of course, what's this keep in place? It keeps this corporate oligarchy in place, who are monopolizing everything, because all the competitors own nothing, so there's no competition. There's no competition for anything. This is just administered socialism by corporate state hybrids, really.
Yeah, and it's sold to us as this technological
Freedom and
freedom at your fingertips.
Right.
Order anything you want, and it's great because you don't have to own it. This utopia, it's such a lie.
And they're selling all the transhumanist elements as like enhancements. You'll be able to go on the web with your brain just connected straight to the internet, and you'll be able to pull down all this information. But what they don't mention, and this is what the premise of Thought Criminal is, and it came from research on this very technology. This is real. Okay, these nanobots, not only will you'll be able to get information from the web, but you'll be transmitting your thoughts to it. Okay. So this is a two-way, the internet is a two-way situation. You are pulling down things from the server, but you're also setting up information. It's interactive, right? Same thing is going to go on here. If this kind of technology, which is on the table, which is being developed, and which is being touted by Klaus Schwab and others, brain cloud interfaces, this will be a means of not only reading your thoughts, but supplementing them and perhaps supplanting them.
I saw something recently. Oh, well, it hasn't been recently because it's hard for me to remember the details. But it was something about how much information we are transmitting just in our browsing histories, the things we're looking at, the time of day we're on the phone, and how much tighter they've made the algorithms so that they can very, very close to accurately predict a lot about us, including the article I read was about a woman getting advertisements for, like, somehow her phone knew that she was pregnant. And it's like being able to tell these
they
things.
Can read your thoughts. It seems like they're reading your actual mind. So I've had ads pop up that are something I just thought about, never even told anybody I thought about it. But I think there's these algorithms that are predictive algorithms. This is what they tout. They'll have predictive algorithms that will predict your behavior. Furthermore, they may have algorithms that preclude certain behaviors, that stop you from having these behaviors, like interrupt thoughts.
Like, what do you mean?
Well, if you have algorithms that are predicting behavior and they're sending this to databases that know what you're going to do next, they can also send algorithms to you that say, don't do it. Okay. Which means, like,
in this future, you mean?
In the future. Now, the future is not far away. We're living in the future in a sense. I mean, I was just looking at this article that I based Thought Criminal on, and it's called, it's in this periodical called Frontiers in Neuroscience. And they're talking about this. And let me just read a very short passage. Real short. Do you have time?
Yeah, we do.
All right, there. It says here that future neural nanorobotics technologies are anticipated to facilitate accurate diagnosis of and eventual cures for conditions in the human brain. Blah blah blah. Of course, they're going to sell it as advantage. Neuro nanorobotics may also enable a brain cloud interface with controlled connectivity between neural activity and external data storage and processing via direct monitoring of the brain's neurons and synapses. subject to navigating the human vasculature, actually going through your bloodstream, 3 species of neuro nanobots, and I won't say whether, enter the brain and ingress into individual brain cells and transmit at the axial initial segments of neurons, blah, blah, blah. And they would then wirelessly transmit bits up per second of synaptically processed and encoded human brain electrical information via auxiliary nanorobotic fiber optics, with the capacity to handle X amount of bits, rapid transfer to a cloud-based supercomputer for real-time brain state monitoring and data extraction.
Sign me up.
Data extraction. Okay, people can't read between the lines what this says. It's unbelievable.
It's gonna be like you said, though, they're gonna market it to us as something that's helpful
Right.
and useful.
This is something now, it probably won't happen in my lifetime, but it may. But I think this stuff you need to teach your children about, because this is not far, this is going to be not on offer. It may be mandatory somehow in the future.
Yeah. We're living in one of these dystopian novels. It
Yeah,
took me a
I
while
can't
to
write a novel that's terrifying enough to ever grasp all this. I tried. I think I failed. I think the novel works as a novel, but I failed to do what I wanted to do, which was to create a dystopia that's worse than the one we're in. And it's not really that easy to do.
No, it's not. It's like look around.
Yeah, that's right.
So, where do you see? Would you say that I know everybody talks about, are you black pill? Are you white pill? Are you red pill? What pill are you? Do you describe yourself in those terms at
Yeah,
all?
I mean, I've often said on Twitter, I need a white pill. I'm deeply black pilled and red pilled. But I have a white pill handy, and that white pill is just a basic faith. Frankly, it's faith. I don't want to have to go too far. I could, but
That's
I think,
okay. That's my white pill.
Yeah, and that is, I believe in God, and also believe in the inviolability of the individual, and the complete uniqueness of each person, and that uniqueness is the safeguard against total control by others. And that's been vouchsafed to us intentionally by our Creator as our birthright and our very heritage as well. It is what we are, and that will be redeemed. That's what I believe.
I agree with you. I think that's my white pill. I'm kind of like, I had to get black pilled before I got white pilled.
Of course.
Yeah.
I do too.
Yeah.
First, I had an onslaught of social justice warriors. Then I had to have a girlfriend leave me because she turned woke and radical feminist. Then I had to have my son get stage 4 cancer all at the same time.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot. And personal, like I know so many people, myself included, who these personal transformations and trials and black pills are happening at the same time as the massive black pill that's going on in society.
Yeah, they're happening at the same time. People are being made aware of what's happening, and then it's changing them internally, and then they're finding themselves needing something. They need a resource. They need a way out. They have to find an escape hatch from this, and this is where I think major spiritual breakthroughs come from.
Yeah. I know it's cliche, but the way I've described it is I had to get to the darkest place to see the light.
Yeah.
And all these things that used to sound, these aphorisms that I used to think of as trite, or I've started to understand them now. Like, oh, well, it's true. You do have to get to a dark place to see the light sometimes.
Yeah.
There was a guy I was talking to who I met through the podcast last summer, and he said to me, I'm no longer an atheist. I'm agnostic. I'm open. I don't know. But the reason I'm open is because I can see evil now.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can see evil, I'm now open to the possibility that there's good.
Yes. This is the only. I talked to an atheist friend of mine about this, and I said, do you see the evil out there?" And he goes, "Oh yeah." I said, "Well, how do you define it? Against what?"
Hmm.
"Well, against good." And I said, "Well, how do you define that? Like, where's that come from? Like, why is it good? And what warrants its goodness as such? You know?" And he was stumped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was having this conversation with my husband yesterday. I think I've started thinking about how I guess my thoughts are changing on the definition of good and where it comes from and morals and ethics and all of these principles that until very recently I thought, well, you can hold all of these things and you don't have to believe in a creator or deity or this
Mhm.
supreme goodness that's where these things come from. But now I'm not so sure, because now I almost think these things need roots in something. You can't pluck them like from a tree. Well, I'm going to take this bit of this
Mhm.
faith and this bit. That where are the roots?
Mhm.
So
Exactly.
when you're tested, what is it? Where does it come from? What's it based on? What's the source? And the source is,
Exactly.
in my opinion, the source is God, a creator. And
Mhm.
I know some people, they talk about the universe. I used to be one of these people talked about the universe, however you want to define it, but
Yeah.
something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah.
And anyway, that's where I'm at. That's a rambly thought, but
Yeah. No,
I'm in the
that's on the same thing I was saying. There has to be a warrant for this, and
yeah.
that is there has to be some grounding for it that is other than itself. Otherwise, what is sustaining it? Like,
Yes.
what is its source? And how do we determine whether that is actually good or not? Like, it has to come from a good source. It has to come from the good source. So,
Yeah, you can't say good is good.
yeah, that's right. It's
Yeah.
good for a reason. It's coming from the source of goodness. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, well, hey, thank you for having that tangent with me. That's something I haven't really articulated this yet. I'm still thinking about it, but um I appreciate you being here today. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I'm trying to keep these to an hour lately.
Yeah,
I just
sure.
want to make sure I'd love to talk to you again sometime, Michael. And I want to make sure people know where to find you and where to find your books.
Yeah, everything is on my website. I don't have a Substack. I keep independent as possible. It's michaelrectenwald.com. There's my books, essays, interviews like this one will be up there. All of my media appearances and every piece of news about me. I keep track of what everything is being said because I want to know what the hell they're saying for one. And then once I find it, I say I might as well have it put up on the site. So I have a catalog of everything. And so everything Michael Rectenwald's there, including my history as a Marxist, some of the writing I did there, even my academic work is up there too.
Oh, that's got to be interesting to read through all of that too. Well, you guys check that out below. We have the link in the description of the video. And final question, what is something that is giving you joy lately?
That's a good question. I would say probably writing actually does. It's one of the major sources for me because then writing is a way of seeing that I can surmount difficulties and to be able to articulate what's going on and then surmounting it through solutions in writing actually gives me the ability to, I think, do so in life.
Yeah.
And that's one source, and the other one is we've already touched on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Michael. Again, if you guys are here for the first time, this is a new channel, so please hit subscribe, share the video if you like it, and we will see you guys in a future episode. Thank you, sir. Take care.
Thank you. Bye bye.